What is a website? How does it work? What goes on in the background when we load a web page? Now, these are some of the most fundamental questions relevant to internet technology, especially if you are a web developer or a software developer. In this video, I will be breaking it down for you. I will talk about what a website is, what it does, what goes on behind the scenes when you click open a web page. But before moving ahead, I want to thank all my subscribers, my viewers for their valuable comments, their feedback. It has been really helpful for me. And if you are new to my channel, let me tell you that it's been just over 1 year since I started creating videos on YouTube, and I am loving it. So let us start first by understanding what a website is. Essentially, a website is made up of a number of HTML pages. It could be one or many. And then we have got the content or the text which we want to display. We have got some styles to put in for the look and feel of the website. Then we have got JavaScript, which does DOM manipulation of certain parts of the website. And then we have got assets, which are obviously images, videos, fonts, etc. So these components come together to form what is called as a website. And this website is rendered on the browser. So here I have opened up example.com. This is the name of the website. And if you can see here, this is what the URL looks like. https://www.example.com. This is the URL of this particular website, and this itself is made up of HTML. As you can see here, the type is document, which means it's an HTML page. And if you want to dig deeper, we can see all the HTML tags here. This is the HTML language. Now this is a very basic website, and as you can see, this is the HTML. This is the text which is showing up, and then we have got the title, we have got head, and so on. To cut it short, the first and the foremost things which is loaded on your browser when you access a website is the HTML page. Everything else just follows from the HTML page. So no matter what website you are visiting on the internet, it is essentially made up of HTML. Now, a website is basically served over HTTP protocol, which you can see here. This is HTTPS. Now, HTTP or HTTPS is derived from application layer protocol called as HTTP. Now, let us take a look at what HTTP stands for. HTTP is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is a protocol which is used for setting up a communication standard between client and a server. It tells us what format we need to follow between the client and server communication. Also, it tells us about how to handle requests and responses, and then it basically is made up of different versions. Well, the HTTP protocol uses TCP/IP under the hood to establish communication, a reliable channel between client and server. The way TCP/IP works is it's a three-way handshake. The client sends a packet to the server acknowledges the packet, and then again the client acknowledges the response from the server. And this way a three-way handshake happens and a reliable communication channel is set between client and a server. I don't want to get more into TCP/IP right now, but I would just say that HTTP basically utilizes TCP/IP in order for it to communicate to the server. Now we should also remember that HTTP works in a typical client-server model, where the client is the requester of the content. In this case, we have got the browser, which is sort of a thin client, and it wants to load a web page which is on a server. So the client has to fetch the web page from the server over the network, and the server is the entity which provides the content. So it's a client and a server communication, hence the client-server model. Now the browser right now does not know where exactly in the World Wide Web is example.com. It could be hosted anywhere in the world. Now the browser has to find out exactly what is the location of the server where example.com website is hosted. In order to understand things better, let's take a look at what an IP address is. IP address is basically an address to identify a particular device on the internet. Simple terms, any device which is connected to internet or a network is supposed to have an IP address. It's just like a phone number which every person has. An IP address is basically broken down into 4 sections or what is called as an octet. There are different types of IP address. There's a public IP address, there's a private IP address, there's static and dynamic IP address as well. We are not going to get into details of the IP address for now. Just remember that IP address is your source of truth on the internet. A device has to have an IP address in order for it to communicate to the rest of the network. But the question is how the web browser finds out the exact IP address. Where is the mapping stored? Now let's take a look at this example. Here I have got example.com. I go to the Chrome browser and enter example.com. Now the Chrome browser has to find out the IP address. What will it do? It will first check the browser cache. If I have already accessed this web page earlier at some point in history, and then it also checks for local cache on the system. If it finds the IP address for example.com on my local system, it would obviously fetch it from there. Otherwise, it would have to fetch it from what is called as a DNS server. A DNS server basically handles the mapping of a IP address to a particular URL. So they have what is called as a name server, where the A record or the address record is mapped. Here in this case, this particular URL is mapped to 10.220.12.9. Now obviously I have shown this DNS server for simplicity's sake as just a box, but in reality a DNS server could be a distributed set of servers, each performing a specific task. But the overall job of a DNS server is to return the IP address which the client wants. So let's say we found the IP address on the DNS server. In the name server we have found the IP address. Now we are returning the IP back to the client. Now the browser has got the IP address. The next thing it has to do is to communicate with this server. So it performs the HTTP request and the server receives the request. It processes the request and gives the response in the form of HTML page. And then the HTML page is received by the browser and it is rendered by the browser. And hence you see the website. So these were some of the fundamentals of internet technology or web technology, how a website works. Obviously, I haven't gone into the inner details and the things are much complex than it seems. Definitely, I will be making videos on each topic separately and we will cover them in depth. By the way, if you are really interested in getting started with YouTube, if you want to create YouTube videos, why not check out the playlist which I have created with the name YouTube Starter Pack. So it has got videos on different things, the kind of microphone I use, my experience with that, how to create thumbnails, how to set up ambient lightings for the studio and all that. So make sure to subscribe to my channel and be notified. Thanks for watching.